Eleanor Page was a sweet, soft-spoken old lady who had worked as the head librarian in the quaint town of Herthorn, Maine, for as long as anyone could remember. Her round glasses perched on her nose, her gentle smile, and her quiet, careful way of speaking made her beloved by the townsfolk. She had a way with people, always there to offer a comforting word, a cup of tea, and the perfect book for anyone who sought one. But there was something unsettling beneath her warm demeanor, something Mark discovered one late evening. Mark had always been a bit of an insomniac, and on a particularly restless night, he wandered into the Briarwood Library, hoping to pass the hours with a book or two. The library was eerily quiet, as always, but this night it felt different. The air was thick, like the library was holding its breath. As he wandered deeper into the stacks, he noticed Eleanor carrying a massive stack of books down the hallway toward the basement. Her steps were careful, deliberate, and there was an odd, almost unsettling glint in her eye as she passed him, giving him a polite but distant smile. Mark had always been curious, so he quietly followed her, heart pounding in his chest for reasons he couldn't explain. He stayed out of sight, slipping behind the rows of bookshelves. He watched her vanish into the basement door, and though he couldn't explain it, a cold shiver ran down his spine. Unable to resist, Mark slowly approached the basement door. His curiosity pushed him forward, and he crept inside. The basement was dimly lit, filled with stacks of books, more than he had ever seen in the library before. But these weren't ordinary books. The covers were slick, leather-bound, their edges crisp and clean. As he looked closer, he felt his stomach lurch. The faces on the book covers were wrong. They weren't just photographs or illustrations. These were real faces, twisted in expressions of terror, eyes wide with an eternal scream. He stumbled backward, his heart pounding. One of the books had a name etched into the cover. Mark Thompson. It was his name. His face was twisted into the most horrific, frozen expression of fear. Mark's breath caught in his throat. He turned to flee, but as he did, his foot caught on something, sending a lantern crashing to the floor. The flame flickered wildly before it went out, plunging the room into darkness. "Looks like we have another collection, dear," a soft voice murmured from behind him. Eleanor's voice. Mark spun around. Her once kind expression was now cold, her eyes glinting with something sinister, something ancient. She wasn't the sweet librarian anymore. She was something else entirely. Something monstrous. Before he could speak, Eleanor took a step toward him, her hands raised as if beckoning him closer. "Shh. You'll be a part of my collection now, Mark. You'll be perfect on a shelf." Terrified, Mark didn't wait to hear more. He bolted for the door, but as he raced up the stairs, he felt the air grow heavier, colder, as if the library itself were alive, holding him back. He burst out of the basement and ran through the library, finally slamming the front door open and escaping into the night. Mark didn't stop running until he reached the police station, gasping for breath. He recounted everything he had seen, every detail. The police listened, skeptical but concerned. They agreed to investigate. But when they arrived at the Briarwood Library, it was as though nothing had ever happened. Eleanor was nowhere to be found. Days passed. The police never found any trace of her or the basement full of strange books. The library was just as it had always been, peaceful, silent, and untouched. But when Mark returned to his apartment that evening, Something was waiting for him on his kitchen table. It was a book, leather-bound, perfectly intact, its cover too polished to be ordinary. He hesitated. He recognized the book immediately. It had his name on it, Mark Thompson. But the cover wasn't a photo of him. It was a blank face, empty, void of any features. A chill ran down Mark's spine as he touched the cover. The book was warm to the touch, as if it had just been pulled from a fire. Slowly trembling, he opened it. The pages were blank, but the longer he stared at them, the more the blankness seemed to shift, as if the pages were waiting for something, waiting for his face, for his name to appear, for him to become part of the collection. Mark slammed the book shut, his heart racing. He glanced around his apartment. Every shadow seemed darker, every sound more sinister. Eleanor's voice echoed in his mind. "You'll be perfect on a shelf." From that moment on, no one in Herthorn ever saw Eleanor again. The library remained standing silent and unchanged, as if it had never been disturbed. But whispers started to spread through the town. People talked of the eerie librarian who had once been so sweet, but now had a collection of faces trapped between the covers of books. Mark never spoke of it again. He left town, but wherever he went, he could never shake the feeling that the library was always watching him, always waiting for him to return. And in the deepest corner of Briarwood Library, the shelves grew, row after row, a collection of faces, silent, trapped in leather-bound prison. The librarian, Eleanor Page, was still there, waiting.